led some HR teams at some of the world's most influential companies, like Meta and Ernst and Young. What do you believe are some of the key qualities that create a truly impactful leader in today's fast-paced and global environment?
Absolutely. I mean, when I think of the answer, I think of the question that you said. Being in an HR leadership role or being in HR leadership roles for the last 2 decades, one of the things that stands out for the capacities of the leaders and those most successful leaders are those that are able to adapt. Right? When we think of what a leader actually was 20 years ago, how we defined a leader 20 years ago, it was the person who stood in the front of the room and who talked, with conviction and directed other people and instilled a sense of fear and, kept the team moving forward. And in 20 years, that term or the idea of leadership has transformed to the person who sits in the back of the room. Now we talk about servant leadership. Now we talk about empowering other people, not being the first to answer the question, not being the person who always has the answer. So that's just one thing that stands out to me. So all of the leaders and all the organizations that I've seen are those who are truly able to adapt and who really understand themselves and who really understand, how to make themselves be the best in the best environment so that they can ensure that they bring out the best of the other people in the room, for sure.
And I love that you talked about that directiveness, because we have shifted away from a directive to a more collaborative, co-creative type of environment. And I'd
Yeah.
love for you to share how you have seen some of that collaboration unfold through the years.
Absolutely. I always joke with people that I've gone from the most extreme environments in that 20-year span. As you noted in my biography, I started off from a military perspective. My parents were both in the military. I was raised on military bases around the world, and my first HR job was actually supporting fighter pilots in North Carolina. So there is really no better example of the true hierarchical nature of the leader that stands in the front, that pushes people forward, and how important that is. And so starting off in that atmosphere and really understanding the benefits of that when it's needed, how you can still work to inspire people in those environments, and going all the way over to the tech environment, right? Where we're in the situation where I'm working at Meta and our executive leaders are coming in with flip-flops and t-shirts, and they're having sessions with the entire organization and having everyone ask all the questions they can. They're doing hackathons, all kinds of things to really get the best ideas from everyone, regardless of their level or where they sit. Has been such a privilege to be able to see that true transformation and to really be able to see how you can pick and choose the best aspects of each of these leadership styles and really use them in the appropriate situation. So I just have been so honored to be able to see the full span and to see them work and not work in some circumstances.
Yeah. And what an extreme, right?
Yeah.
From more of the military acumen to flip-flops, right? So when you're thinking about that,
Exactly.
what extremes those are, because you never catch that at a military base. Um, and what I find most profound is that adaptability that you talked about. What did you
Absolutely.
learn about yourself going from that environment to the other?
You know what? I mentioned this and you mentioned it actually in my biography, but I think it was really something that was ingrained on me just living the lifestyle of a military brat. So even before I graduated high school in Germany, I had the opportunity to go to 3 different high schools in 3 different countries. I was living and kind of following my parents in all different types of cultures and environments. So it was something that kind of came naturally to me. It wasn't like
Mhm.
anybody asked me if I was ready to move or ready to go to this new school or
Right.
ready to join this new cheerleading team. So I really learned the value of appreciating each and every community, each and every organization, each and every school or environment. Some things I loved, some things I didn't, but kind of take the best, keep moving forward, and eventually you'll have this amazing catalog of experiences to choose from. So I think that's what I've emulated in my professional career. I've been able to start again with the military, see that full structure, see that level of discipline, honor, and integrity, go to nuclear, go to manufacturing, go to professional services and tech. And each and every journey, each and every country and organization and leaders just taught me so much. So I just feel so lucky and incredibly privileged to have stepped back at this stage of my career and see this amalgamation of all these different um, really amazing leadership styles and organizations that I can leverage for sure.
And I know on the show we've talked about, cultures and culture gaps and different things like that. During your time in Tokyo with Toshiba, what were some of the biggest cultural differences that you needed to navigate, and how did that experience influence your perspective on global leadership?
Such a good question. As I mentioned, I did grow up in Europe. I had lived in a lot of different places. So I think even I underestimated how much of a gap it would be for me to just jump over and move to Tokyo. I was selected for a pretty prestigious rotation program where I actually moved to Tokyo, had never been to Japan before, really didn't have a grasp of the language, didn't really understand it, and volunteered to go work downtown Tokyo in the Toshiba headquarters. And I was by myself in my mid 20s and felt like I could conquer the world. I had done lots of really good, impressive things in my career, wasn't scared at all, jumped right into the office. And I was blown away within my first few weeks of things that I just took for granted and things that I had learned in a corporate environment and military environment. Two funny things that I noticed right off the bat was the concept of doing presentations. So I was doing my first presentation and I thought I nailed it. I felt really good about it. I had followed all the structure that I had learned in my other previous roles. It was short and sweet. My slides were concise. I had a lot of personality. And I was shocked when my manager took me aside and said, this actually didn't really deliver what we were looking for. So I remained open and just learned very quickly things that we had learned in terms of presentation styles were very opposite. My slides needed to be more detailed, right? The focus wasn't on the energy. The focus is the where people sit in the room, the way that you present the information, and really being aware of those cultural nuances
Mm-mm.
created night and day differences to the reception of the material that I was sharing. So silly examples that you kind of take for granted, but the fact that I was so open and willing and actually encouraged my manager to give me immediate feedback, even
Yeah.
though that wasn't part of the culture, really saved me. It really allowed me to step beyond my comfort zone and what I assumed were the things that made me successful before and look for ways to find success and adopt to another culture. There's nothing like being the only American on the floor in the group to really humble you and help you to understand what you think might be the best isn't always the best in another situation.
Yeah. And that's very powerful because it takes courage to, first of all, do something and realize you did it wrong, right? And
Absolutely.
own that, but also to ask for feedback, which is not something traditionally done.
Yeah.
But how has making mistakes or having failures helped you become the success you are today?
I just can't think of a better way to get to where you need to be. And for me, I've been pretty open to asking, right? There's no way that
Mhm.
that I could have gotten to the steps that I have been able to without getting that feedback. I think the biggest piece for me was knowing there is no objective best, there is no objective right way. What I say to people all the time is the same presentation that I would have made in the military, at Meta, in Japan and Toshiba headquarters at a nuclear company. I could make the same presentation, I could have the same outfit, I could have the same inflection, and I would get 6 or 7 different responses as to whether it was good or not, what I could improve or not, whether
Yeah.
it hit the mark. So I think that lesson very early in life helped me to detach a little bit and say, this feedback isn't a reflection of me. This is not them, saying that I'm not good. I shouldn't take this personally, which is hard for people to really do. So it allowed me to detach and separate my identity from the products and the services and the support that I was providing and really put the customer, the stakeholder, the leader, the organization first and make sure that I was providing a service to them, as opposed to, thinking every piece of feedback, every single thing that someone said was a reflection on me. It really allowed me to be much more flexible and receptive to adjusting myself while maintaining my own identity, for
Yeah.
sure.
And I
Yeah.
love that you said that, because I think so often, we do take failures and mistakes personally versus
Yeah.
stepping back and just wanting to learn from it, because the role you play or within the context you're in is separate than the person you are and what you're
Yeah.
worth and your value that you bring to the table. And I
Yes.
think too often people have them all so tightly wound that we forget that, even as when kids are misbehaving, we still love the kid. It's the behavior
Exactly.
that we need to change, right? So
Exactly.
I find it fascinating, as adults, the same thing shows up when we make mistakes, right? We take them personally without taking a step back and saying, it's about the context of the situation and the behavior or the role I played.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So important. It's so much easier said than done. So it's something I'm always working on, but I do think that is the key for everyone, myself included, to keep approaching things with curiosity and growing as a professional and frankly as a person.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what I've also come to realize, like, you faced some considerable setbacks, right? You laid off from Meta, you went through a divorce. How did you find the strength to rebuild? And what advice would you give someone who has some unexpected career or life transitions?
Absolutely. A few pieces of advice for everyone, and what I really held on to was, we're human. Those were setbacks and they hurt like hell. So having this space and giving myself the grace to really go through those emotions. There are mourning processes, there are grieving processes. You go through the emotions of being embarrassed, being sad, being angry, being in disbelief. And as I was traveling through those different emotions, I really leaned on my support network. I really connected with my family at a deeper level. I connected with my friends, my trusted friends, and I really reached out and leveraged some really important coaches for me to kind of help me as I moved through each of those phases. And the other key was moving through those phases, but not getting stuck in those phases, going through the emotions, but still really, really working on establishing my identity. Who am I outside of being a wife? Who am I outside of being, this leader at this company? Who am I outside of this status? So for me, traveling through those emotions and then really working with coaches and professionals that helped me to really get past those things and to really establish an identity in and outside of the things that I had clung to so tightly before, was really the key for me, being able to move forward and reimagine a life that's arguably more exciting and fulfilling than anything that I actually experienced beforehand.
Yeah. And I'd love to dive in here a little bit deeper here, because
Sure.
the identity piece is such a fascinating part for me. When we have life transitions, or, people who've experienced injury, illness, divorce, death of a loved one, um,
Absolutely.
it really makes you reflect and revisit your world.